Hello, friends. Welcome back to the cabin. My name is Tim Martin with Covenant Creation on YouTube. I just wanted to get on here and make a quick video to give you an update on some things that are in the works and the planning that's going on. We have finished up with our major spring rush plant season, asparagus harvest season for the farm, and now I am planning to work very hard on conference preparations. So we are now about 6 weeks away from the Montana Wild Conference titled The Eschatology of Genesis. And we have 7 speakers now confirmed. We have the 6 that we planned. That would be Don Preston, Jeff Vaughn, Zach Davis, Rick Welch, Steve Magua, and myself. And we have a bonus speaker lined up as well. So that will be announced at the conference. And one of the things I wanted to put the word out about is that I now have, with some help with the partners, we now have a merchandise store available online to buy merchandise for the Montana conference. Let me show you what, if you go to my website, beyondcreationscience.com, and if you click here, the homepage, we have the advertisement for the conference. If you go to the conference, there is a Montana Wild Conference merchandise store with lots of good things for you to peruse, and shirts, hoodies, coffee cups, hats, all themed for our Montana Wild Conference. So I'll put the word out about that. You can find that on the website, beyondcreationscience.com, on the conference page. And if you're at all interested in even thinking about coming, I do recommend you join our Facebook planning group. It's called Montana Conference Planning on Facebook. There's a lot of discussion going on right there in that discussion group about plans for events, plans for travel, plans for basically cooperating and making everything happen. So I'll invite you to that Facebook group if you are at all interested in examining the options to come to Montana July 22nd through 25th for the Eschatology of Genesis conference. Now, I have been studying along with everything else for my 2 presentations, and I figured I'd give you a little bit of a sneak peek at what I've got in mind. My 2 conference presentations are going to be a 2-part series. There's going to be a part 1 and there's going to be a part 2, and you'll see why I have organized it that way. The first one is called The Biblical Theology of the First and the Second. And the second part will be more of a demonstration of the ideas that I lay out in the first presentation. That's called The Eschatology of the Firmament. Of course, the firmament was introduced in Genesis chapter 1. I've done some work on the eschatology of the firmament, but I've got a lot more material that I've run across in the last 2 or 3 years. If you remember, I actually challenged someone to a debate about the firmament in that video. But my 2 conference presentations, the first one, the biblical theology of the first and the second, I think it's going to be some groundbreaking material, some new ideas that people have not probably considered very much before. I'm going to be dealing with the biblical theology of the first and the second, which is actually a big theme in the New Testament. But I actually believe that the theology of the first and the second goes deep into redemptive history, and it incarnates itself in the stories that we read all over the Old Testament, that we read all over the New Testament as well. But there's a deep theme there that's not just theology. It's not just the theology of covenant transition from old covenant to new covenant, the first and then the second. It's actually woven into redemptive history. I'll give you a few examples to think about. The kingdoms of Israel, there were actually 2 houses to the kingdoms of Israel. If you remember, who was the first king of Israel? It was Saul, right? And Saul was very good looking. He was taller. He was appealing to the eyes. But what happened to Saul's kingdom? Saul's kingdom came to an end. And there was a remnant saved from that kingdom with Jonathan's covenant with who? The second kingdom. The second house of the kingdom of Israel is David. And that one is a lasting kingdom. So there's the first and the second actually incarnated into the history of Israel. Pretty neat stuff if you read about Mephibosheth and Jonathan's heir and coming to the table of David for the rest of his life, thanks to Jonathan's faithfulness to David. He was the remnant. So things like that. There's another thing that happens so much that I think people don't understand. Consider how the first and second theme plays out in the children across the Old Testament. Have you ever noticed that? The firstborn and the secondborn? What happens to the firstborn? A lot of times, firstborn gets disinherited or is a covenant apostate who is cut out of the family. This theme starts very early. The first and the second plays its way out with, for example, Cain and Abel, right? Cain was the firstborn. Abel was the righteous one. And you have it replaying again with Ishmael and Isaac, right? Ishmael's the firstborn, but he doesn't inherit anything. Everything is left to Isaac, Abraham's only son, according to Genesis. So there's a first and the second son there too. There is Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. If you remember the story with Joseph, he crosses his hands so that the blessing goes on the younger, not the older, not the first. It goes to the second son. And even Joseph was a younger son. He was not a firstborn. And yet Joseph, because of his two sons born in Egypt, inherits a double portion in the land of Israel through the tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim. So another younger son thing. How about Moses and Aaron? Which one do you think is the oldest? See, Bible trivia here, first and the second. Aaron is told, we are told in Exodus that Aaron is the oldest, and Moses is 3 years younger than Aaron. And that means that Aaron was already born along with Miriam in the story of Moses in the basket in the Nile. So Moses is the second, the greater, and Aaron is the first. So fascinating stuff. We could play that game for a long time. How about David's first son, Absalom? What happened to Absalom? He had beautiful hair, right? He was all stuck on the outer looks of the hair. And then there was Solomon, the humble son from questionable origins, the first and the second. So I'm playing around here. There's a lot of cool stuff when you get into first and second in the Old Testament. How about Jonah? Do you realize Jonah was given 2 commissions? Jonah chapter 1, arise, Jonah, go to Nineveh. What happened? It failed. And there's a death in the belly of the fish. But then there's a resurrection in Jonah 3, and Jonah gets his second commission. Arise, Jonah, go to Nineveh. And what happens? All the Gentiles convert, repent, and forsake their evil ways. So it's a successful second commission for Jonah. Did you know there's 2 dominion mandates in Genesis as well? There's the Genesis 1 dominion mandate for Adam, when Adam was given all the herbs of the field to eat. And there's another dominion mandate in Genesis chapter 9 after the story of Noah and the flood. And Noah was given the animals to eat as well, the first and the second. I think that's typological. That goes to the first covenant, childhood, eat herbs, you feed babies world peas, right? But when you grow up and you be a man, you eat meat. So the first and the second plays its way out over and over and over again. You know, Noah was a 10th from Adam, so he's a consummation man. Everything that happens with Noah is typological of Jesus Christ, who is the greater Noah during a greater flood. So we have the first and the second with floods. We have the first and second with the Exodus. And I'm going to show that we have the first and the second with creation, the greater second creation. So that's what I'm going to talk about. It even pops up in the New Testament. Paul had 2 lives. What was Paul's first life? Saul of Tarsus, the old covenant Saul. zealous for the law, persecuting Christians. That came to an end. What happens? Then you have Paul, the second part of his life, his second life as a believer. Or how about we have, I think this goes even deeper into the cultural of the ancient Near East. People don't realize that in every marriage in the ancient Near East, there are 2 covenant marriages. There's the betrothal, which is a temporary covenant, and then there's the full marriage, right? It's everlasting. So when you get to the New Testament and you open up the first pages of the New Testament, you have the story of Mary and Joseph. What do you think is being represented in their lives? Mary is depicting the situation that Old Covenant was in by appearances. Mary appeared to be unfaithful to Joseph because she was with child. Of course, that was just appearances. And what was Joseph going to do? Godly Joseph, a righteous man, he's going to give Mary a certificate of divorce and send her away quietly. Think Hosea. So here we have the opening of the New Testament. You've got the situation that is incarnating in the story of Mary and Joseph, this whole story, backstory with Israel being unfaithful to their betrothal covenant, because Sinai was the first covenant. It's the betrothal. That's what Ezekiel 16 says. Cover you with the corner of my garment. That's the betrothal. And Israel is waiting for the full marriage to come, the everlasting covenant. So you have the first and the second incarnated in the ancient Near East life of marriage practice. And we miss all that stuff because we don't understand the Old Testament. But so the biblical theology of the first and the second is really rich, really, really rich. So old wine, new wine. How about the marriage of Cana? The first wine, not so good. The second wine is the best, right? Or you don't put wine into new wine into old wineskins. You have the first wineskins and you have the second wineskins. So how deep does this really go? I'm going to explore that in this presentation. And that will set the stage for the eschatology of the firmament. And I've been working on that, like I said, that firmament issue from Genesis 1. I've been working on that issue for many years. I found a bunch of new material related to the firmament. And in that talk, I'm planning on showing some art and talking about some music. And that'll actually be the concluding presentation of the conference. But I'm really, really looking forward to that, the eschatology of the firmament, because it shows something very profound about the eschatology of Genesis. And that is that the eschatology of Genesis is all about Jesus Christ. So that'll be a good place for the conference to wrap up. And as I've been doing this study, I've been adding citations to my Beyond Creation Science webpage titled Favorite Quotes from Wider Scholarship. Let me see if I can pull that up. Okay, if you go to the homepage of beyondcreationscience.com, and if you go down to on the homepage to favorite quotes from wider scholarship, and click on that link. As a result of a bunch of more of my studies for this conference, I've added a ton of new citations, relevant quotes from various different authors and theologians. I even have a video clip section related to covenant creation too. So if you want to kind of check that out, I can say that in the last couple of weeks, this has really grown for the page to find I found some just amazing stuff. So I'm sharing that with you. If you want to take a look at some kind of neat stuff, check that out. And as I wrap this up here, one recommendation that I would give to you is that if you're like interested in where this covenant creation stuff goes and how the work is being done on it, let me recommend to you Maurice Rogers of New Kosmos Videocast. He has done a new series called The New Heavens and Earth Are Now. And I've got a playlist on my YouTube channel where I have all of his presentations on that playlist. And he's taken the days of creation, the pattern that is set in Genesis, and showing how the New Testament is unfolding historically in discernible days, matching the original creation. And it has blown me away. In fact, some of the stuff that Maurice is doing is really kind of what I had in mind for the conference. So he kind of ate my lunch here and got ahead of me. I'm jealous, Maurice. You beat me to the punch on some of this stuff, but I want to get everybody out there the word to watch Maurice Rogers' series called "The New Heavens and New Earth Are Now," and he follows the days of the new creation, patterned after Genesis creation. And I just want to say to Maurice, I've done a book review on Maurice's book called "Everything is Temple." You can find that on my YouTube channel. We did an interview last winter. You can check that out if you haven't. I'll leave links to both of those in this on the notes of this video. But I just want to say to Maurice how much I appreciate your work, Maurice. Your disciplined work. Every Sunday you're putting out, a regular scheduled release. And particularly this series really has blown me away. So I look forward to Sunday mornings every week because of Maurice's material. So I want to put my subscribers out to take a look at that. I'll leave a link to that playlist in this. And Maurice, if you're listening, someday, one of my goals, one of my bucket lists is to get you to the United States at some point, at some future conference, so that you can be a speaker at something like a covenant creation conference or something, because wow, just amazing, amazing work over the last 2 years related to covenant creation and covenant new creation in Christ within the context of temple theology and fulfilled prophecy. So that's what I have. We're working really hard for the conference. Make some plans, buy some tickets. It's going to be an epic time. We're really thinking that this is going to be a great event. Get some merch, get some shirts, hats, whatever from the merch store, and find Maurice's work on the playlist. Until next time, this is Tim Martin with Covenant Creation on YouTube. Blessings.